it comes to the worst renditions of Scooby Doo, most people will point to any series that has Scrappy in it. While I have not watched enough of the TV shows and movies with Scrappy to make an accurate assessment on whether he deserves this assertion, the ones that I have watched don't seem to point in the direction the internet thinks of him, including the first Scooby Doo live action movie and the 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo. In the live action movie, Scrappy is purposely written as annoying and evil because of the director's dislike for his character, so my only true experience with him was in the 13 Ghosts. And to be truly honest, I didn't really dislike Scrappy's character. Scrappy was just meant to gas up Scooby and partake in the disguise gag in each episode, along with Flim Flam, and beyond that, he only had like 4 lines of dialogue. The reason why I immediately talk about Scrappy is because I want to talk about my least favorite rendition of Scooby Doo. Like I stated earlier, most people would consider anything with Scrappy to be the absolute worst, but my least favorite version of Scooby Doo is Scoob. Directed by Tony Cervone, Scoob is a 2020 animated hour and 30-minute kick in the balls to anybody who would consider themselves a Scooby Doo fan. This movie has problems with characters, motives, casting, trying to be funny, and accuracy to the source material. The all-encompassing feeling that makes me not like this film is that it doesn't feel like a Scooby-Doo movie. When I watched through it, there are little things that I noticed that made me feel like a fan film with a smaller budget could have done better. There was no Scooby-Doo bite mark into the Warner Brothers label like in the live-action movies. There was little reference to any other Scooby-Doo show, and all the character dynamics just feel off. Going back and thinking about it, this is more of a Hanna-Barbera film than a Scooby-Doo one. Characters like Blue Falcon and Dynamite from Blue Falcon, Captain Caveman and Dee Dee Skies from Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels, and even Dick Dastardly and Muttley were put in there from Wacky Races. Even during the end credits, I saw more Hanna-Barbera references than Scooby-Doo ones, like Jabberjaw, the Great Grape Ape, the Adam Ant, Dr. Benton Quest, and Frankenstein Jr. I understand the concept that this movie was meant to set up a new Hanna-Barbera universe of films, but this is not the way to do it. The Marvel method of teasing the next movie in the end credit scene is long overdone, and it doesn't work here. All these cameos require intense knowledge of these old Hanna-Barbera cartoons to connect the dots, even though Scooby-Doo is the only show that is still alive and running. There are no true Scooby-Doo references in this movie other than the opening credits, but it is so baseline that I almost forgot it was there. In the final scene of the movie, Fred says, "When will the DJ be here?" And then Shaggy says, "They?" And then Fred says, "They," and I swear it is the biggest letdown of the movie. Right here, if they would have the Hex Girls roll up on the spot and start jamming out, I would have scrapped this video because I have no further respect for the film. But instead of this amazing idea, they decide to just make Blue Falcon the DJ because, well, just because. Honestly, even though this contradicts my previous statement, I think a music and dance segment is the worst way to end a movie ever. I never understood the appeal, and it stinks of a screenwriter that doesn't even understand how to end their own movie. And keeping on the topic of the aesthetic of the movie, what were the producers in charge of this movie thinking when they hired the voice cast? The executives must have been completely and utterly idiotic to hire people who have never voiced these characters before over ones that have been doing it for years. Will Forte would be a good Shaggy if I had never heard the amazing cadence that Matthew Lillard brought to the table for this character. Like Daphne's mom said,
"Think of it like trying a new cut of meat. Why have ground beef when you can have a nice prime rib?"
comparable to a dude walking into the store off the street and taking your job out of nowhere, and you have no say or stake in the matter, even though you've been holding the position for over 15 years. And please, don't hate on any of these actors. They didn't do bad jobs, but just in comparison to the people who have been doing it for over decades, there are better voice casting choices. They screwed over Greta Griffin, someone who has been voicing Daphne since What's New Scooby-Doo, and Kate Micucci, who has been voicing the character since Be Cool Scooby-Doo. I think the most egregious error here was the voice of Fred. Frank Welker, who has been voicing the character of Fred in almost every single Scooby-Doo cartoon since 1969, gets screwed over for the role he was practically born into by Zac Efron. You have this voice acting legend who has been doing this character for over half a century now, and maybe some of the last years of his life. You switch him out in one of the biggest budget Scooby-Doo movies since 2001. The reason I feel worse for the other cast members over Frank is because he still got a part in the movie as Scooby-Doo, which thank gosh they gave him that, or all hell would have broken loose. There are a bunch of more things that make this movie feel bad from an aesthetic standpoint, but I'm not sure how to incorporate them into this part of the script, so at the end of the video I will go over a few of the things that still annoy me. Anyways, moving on. I don't understand why we are back to the place in time where Shaggy and Scooby must be the center of the gang. You can explore this group beyond these two characters, and because this movie fails to do so, it fails to be good. Rewatching through this movie, you can tell that most of the conflicts with Shaggy and Scooby are super contrived, to the point where any screenwriter should have noticed the issues between them and tried to fix it. Namely, the whole debacle with Scooby-Doo's collar and him taking it off for the super suit to fit. Honestly, if the whole issue was with Scooby never taking off his collar, then I gotta tell Shaggy that he is a terrible pet owner. After 4 months of my dog wearing collars, we have to replace them or else they're basically a health issue from the amount of decay they go through. So for Scooby to have been wearing the same collar for 15 years is just plain disgusting. Also, for the whole super suit, Scooby could have just put the collar on after he put the suit on. There was nothing ever blocking him from doing so. It's not like the super suit did anything for Scooby anyways, because it got destroyed 15 seconds into battle with Captain Caveman, showing the true reason the suit was in the movie: plot convenience. I like to compare Shaggy and Scooby in this movie to them in the first 10 episodes of Mystery Inc. There is tension between them in both projects, but in Mystery Inc., the harshness of Velma and her attitude of all or nothing was a believable scenario that kept them apart until Shaggy broke up with her. In Scoob, there is nothing to do that, because nothing truly comes in the way of their friendship other than a stupid supersuit. And Shaggy was also a complete ass the entire movie. He should have embraced and encouraged Scooby other than detracting him and giving him an ultimatum like Velma did in Mystery Inc. The end of the movie was the best possible scenario for these characters to end their arcs. Shaggy sacrificing himself for Scooby, the gang, and the world was a good way to show his true friendship to Scooby, but everything that came up to this point made this moment feel undeserved. They need to add a more thought-out external conflict than Scooby's supersuit to pull these uber friends apart, and maybe if they did, this would be a better movie. These three are what annoyed me most about this movie. There was nothing they had accomplished the entire time. I guess you could say they were trying to investigate where Shaggy and Scooby were, but since the audience already had that answer, there was no dramatic tension or time urgency to their mission. These characters being boring and useless also brings us back to the old age of Scooby Doo, which is good with art style and aesthetic, but for a modern movie, it just doesn't work. I could see better arcs for these characters, in which they see they don't need to conform to their character personalities that Simon Cowell assigned to them in the movie. I also have a ton of contention with these assignments in the movie. Velma being Brain makes sense, no problems there, and him saying Daphne was the empath was something I kind of liked. It brought her back to the Zombie Island movie times, where she was the most presentable and the people person. She had access to things other gang members couldn't get because of her social skills. Where she falls flat in this movie, though, is that she just makes friends with a robot who simps over her for the rest of the movie. When she is labeled the people person, this isn't what I want. I want her to be smart and resourceful, not just make some bullshit relationship with a random robot. Where I find the most issue with what Simon Cowell said is with Fred. Calling Fred the Tank was about the most annoying thing ever. It's not even like this label couldn't fit. In Mystery Incorporated, Fred got into a lot of physical fights and won a lot of them. He even got into a fight with his Mirrorverse self over the disc and won. So while calling Fred the Tank in a show like Mystery Incorporated could work, it still wouldn't even be his most accurate label. Something like the Trapper or the Leader would have been a better fit. Even calling him the Uber would be more accurate than the Tank. Going back to Scoob, he does nothing tanky in this movie. He runs away from more things than attacking them, showing how terribly they mistreated his character. These characters being so spiteful, angry, and sarcastic with each other is not a good representation of them. There are arguments in Mystery Inc. during the first 10 episodes were reminiscent of them in this movie, where they just seem to hate each other's guts, and wasn't for their collective love of mystery solving, they wouldn't even be friends in the first place. The gang needs a reason to be together other than mystery solving, so their arguments make emotional sense and don't seem contrived. This brings me to my next point. Continuing after what Simon Cowell said in the beginning of the movie, Shaggy and Scooby's arc during this film is learning they are the heart of Mystery Inc. While this has been used before to describe these two characters in certain situations, it is enough to support them this entire movie. As I said previously, these characters need to love each other to create a reasonable expectation as to why they continue to solve mysteries. Shaggy and Scooby aren't the heart, the entire gang is the heart. They all need to love each other, not have Shaggy and Scooby be a weird glue to make them work. I understand that if Shaggy and Scooby aren't the heart, then what are they in Simon Cowell's description? Which brings me back to a previous point where these characters don't need this one description. They are all their own characters, and they don't need to fit one-note criteria. A lot of complaints many people have with this movie is that it strayed too far from the source material. Many of the topics I previously stated can be said to contribute to this, but one of the major issues is that the inclusion of superhero characters turned this movie away from a mystery to solve and to a superhero epic. They tried to fix this problem with the gang unmasking Dick after the gates of hell were closed, but this came out of nowhere. Nothing was leading anybody in the major cast to believe that Dastardly was pretending to be somebody else, and to end this all, they made it Simon Cowell. Of course, this is the second movie to use a double unmasking to show that Simon Cowell was Dastardly all along, but this still doesn't fix the problem. Saying that Simon was still Dick makes me even madder because they don't have the balls to stay with their consequences. To try to start a major connected Marvel-style Hanna-Barbera universe on the promise of a Scooby Doo movie, but make the inclusion of superhero characters the plot of the film was disappointing to a lot of people, myself included. They shouldn't have made this film this way because it alienates previous audiences and makes this a new experience even though it wasn't marketed that way. But a superhero epic is what makes Scooby Doo so great and memorable. The tension of solving a mystery, especially with huge stakes and threats on the table, is needed. And while a superhero epic could provide this, it isn't like the originals and needed to be close to them to set up this universe. I didn't dislike these two characters as I expected I would. There were genuine moments between themselves and the other members, like when Blue Falcon and Shaggy are talking about the package of his father's memorabilia. This moment felt real and genuine in a movie that fails to do so all the time. Aside from this moment that I liked, the roles of Blue Falcon and Dynamite should be reversed. Like in their original show and their appearance in Mystery Inc., Blue Falcon is serious and brooding, like the Dark Knight Batman he was modeled after, and the Dynamite is a goofy, fun-loving dog, which is why he was always sweet to Blue Falcon and those he cares about. These characters being a major part of the movie but failing to be their original selves gives me the same vibe that the rest of the game does, where they are fake people trying to be real. Not much to say after the big role reversal issue. For a movie that is supposedly focused on them, I am super impartial to their existence. Now that I am done with all the major topics, I will go over little items that contributed to my dislike of this movie. Number 1. Fred was turned into a big dumb guy in more than 10 scenes. I'll put them in the comments if you don't believe me. Number 2. In the flashback scenes, Scooby wasn't afraid of the haunted house until their candy was thrown into it, showing the inconsistency of the writing. Number 3. Shaggy and Scooby had no incentive to solve mysteries again. They already have friends in each other, so it is against their characters in this movie to continue with the gang. Number 4. Why is despise even in this movie? 5. Going into physics, reversing the polarity of the tractor beam in the Falcon Fury would not be enough to push the Falcon Fury away from the dastardly ship. The tractor beam can only reel on small mass objects, so continuing this logic, the reverse tractor beam can only push away small mass objects, which the dastardly ship isn't. It's larger than the Falcon Fury. Logic shows reversing the tractor beam would not be able to push the Falcon Fury away. 6. I hate the new Mystery Machine. They should have rebuilt it to look like the original. I guess I lied. I don't hate this movie, but the worst parts of it outweigh the whole so much that I would call it a major dislike. This movie needs to overcome the fact it doesn't have to change Scooby Doo for it to be new and good, but instead embrace past versions of it and look to the future of this franchise. To be honest, I was looking forward towards a sequel, Scoob Holiday Haunt. The director said he would fix most of the issues and even turn back to a normal mystery, with an interview with the director stating that Sheriff Stone was set to return. But the cancellation of this movie saddens me, especially since it had a chance to surpass the original.